The story of the healing of Jairus' daughter is, of course, one of the best-known miracle stories in the New Testament. And for many people here, it's a story that we would have grown up with, a story that would have been told to us in Sunday school, because it's that sort of story that engages young people. It's more relevant to young people than exotic Middle Eastern diseases. And although the story is very well known, the story of the woman who appears in the middle of it is, less well talked about. In some ways, it just appears to be a dramatic interlude in the main story, something to add a little more tension, a little more drama. Without this delay, it would have just been a healing miracle. Mind you, can you use the word just and miracle in the same sentence? And had this incident not happened, it would have been healing rather than resurrection, resuscitation miracle. It's just worth pondering for a moment. What cosmic forces are at work when we pray? And when prayers are answered, and sometimes they're answered more often than we think, what ripples cross time and space? Because Jairus and the woman could not be farther apart on the social spectrum. One having almost everything he wanted. He was looked up to. He was respected by all around him. While the woman had nothing. And the rituals surrounding her illness excluded her from society. She was someone everyone would do their best to avoid. Yet both needed Jesus. And it reminds us of the universality of the gospel. We live in what is sometimes called a postmodern, pluralistic society, where everything is relative. People don't tend to talk about sin. And if they do talk about sin, it's not often in the context of religious morality. Although people may not admit it in public, it is a part of being human to feel dissatisfied, incomplete, to feel that we are something of a failure. Now, none of us here are international criminal masterminds. Well, I assume not, anyway. But we all know that we have failed. We have failed to meet the standards which we would choose to set for ourselves, let alone the standards for which we were created for. We believe that Jesus meets our most fundamental desires. Desires to be loved, desires to be forgiven, desires to be told, yes, you are okay. The desire to feel whole and complete. For the woman's plight was twofold. Her illness was chronic, and it had cost her all the money she had, mainly given to bogus doctors who made her condition worse. Mark, if you read the Gospel, gives a feeling of being really angry that this woman's vulnerability had been exploited. And as a result of her illness, she would have been excluded from society, not being allowed to mix socially. She would probably have been married at one stage, because Mark would have told us if she was a widow, and widows had a different dress code from other women. So she probably had a husband at one time, but her illness had caused him to leave, or she to leave him. She would be unable to make friends or develop any of the normal social relationships that we do naturally. She would not have been able to work. She would not have been able to attend the synagogue. So her spiritual needs also remained unfulfilled. Because in a way, her illness is irrelevant. Because her dignity as a human being had been taken from her. The woman had, in this story, had not just lost her dignity, she'd lost her humanity. If we believe that we are created in the image of God, however spoiled that might be, all humans require a level of respect. So what might it mean to be created in God's image? Firstly, we are people that are so important, so significant, that Jesus felt it was worth dying for us. If we are created in God's image, it means that we are created to be in relationships with one another. Relationships that cut across those false barriers of age, sex, rank, and race. If we are created as human in God's image, it means we are created to be creative and to contribute in a positive way to the society in which we live. And that means of contribution is usually through work or volunteering. To be created in God's image means that we have the right to share the earth's resources of food, shelter, and the protection from disease. And it challenges me on a daily basis to treat those anonymous people that we meet day in, day out with respect and dignity. We all live busy lives, crammed full of things to do. I wonder whatever happened to that 60s prediction that we would live lives of leisure and robots would do everything. Because we see more and more busy as days go by. We want to do those daily tasks that we have to do as quickly as possible. So we can often ignore the checkout operator, the shop assistant, the post office worker, the bank teller, that homeless person that sits in the doorway, the street musician that's strumming away. Mind you, there's one or two that are hard to ignore. And I even get frustrated when some people try to engage a shop assistant in conversation. And I'm there thinking, I am wasting my time standing here in this queue. Treating people with dignity. Wouldn't it make a wonderful Cornishman headline? People unexpectedly treated nicely. That would be news. But all these people that serve us are also created in God's image. The woman in our story has only 9 verses. And then she disappears totally. But what 9 verses they were. She did 5 things. She heard, she touched, she met, she was healed. Because of her faith. She went away whole. I do wonder how this woman heard about Jesus. No doubt there was a buzz around anywhere Jesus went. Today people are less likely just to drop into our chapels or churches to hear the message. So we need continually to be more creative in how we spread the gospel. Whether it is through acts of compassion that are so compelling that it challenges people to consider why we do the things we do, or through gossiping the gospel in our everyday conversation. And this is very relevant at this time where the media are making so much out of a survey that says that less than 50% of the people in this country claim to be Christian. There has never been a better time to be courageous yet gentle, admitting that we live our lives for Jesus and by his kingdom standards. In the society in which this story is set, religious people, often personified by Pharisees, would strive to keep themselves pure and holy, and this means there are things they could or shouldn't do. So being touched by a sick woman would make you impure. But that's not the way Jesus works at all. In the story of the Good Samaritan, the excuse given by the priest and the Levi for not helping the beaten man was it would make them ritually impure and couldn't attend religious services. In the story of Jesus having his feet washed by a notorious woman, Simon, the host of the meal, criticised Jesus for letting such a woman touch him. But Jesus forgives the woman her sins, and his purity makes her pure. And here the woman touches Jesus. And Jesus' purity, Jesus' holiness transforms this woman. Purity, that matters, is our unambiguous willingness to accept the new life that Jesus offers us. Holiness is not an achievement secured by keeping ourselves unsullied by the world, but it is an infection caught by keeping close to Jesus. For there's a great difference between being holy and looking holy, because I really love it when Christians are found in places you wouldn't expect to find them. Where groups go off to a football match or a rugby match together. They go to a pub or a restaurant and they share a meal together. They are seen out enjoying themselves, which challenges the negative stereotypes many people hold about Christians. For some Christians fear such situations, that they may somehow become corrupted. But I think the reverse is true. That where Christians are, the kingdom is there as well. And you do find that if a group of Christians are in a place, it does affect attitudes and behaviours of those around them. We never know what effect we have on the people we come in contact with. Such was her touch that Jesus turned And for the first time, the woman met Jesus face to face. She then told Jesus her whole story. Notice she was honest with him. And she was healed physically and spiritually. This is God's grace. For me, God's grace is rather like a Cornish cream tea. There are other imposters available. Cream on top. Because, maybe this is just me, but you have a scone, you put the jam on, and then it have a chance to put as much, pile more and more and more cream on top. So much that I can't even get it in my mouth. And this is God's grace. He piles more and more and more on top. Then finally she is healed through her faith. And she goes away praising God. She is transformed to live a life of transformation. Day after day she suddenly discovers things that she formerly couldn't do or wasn't allowed to do. So as we enter another week, let us be challenged by this woman as we ponder her story. Let us too listen for the voice of Jesus speaking to us. Let Jesus' words touch our hearts. Let us meet with Jesus in prayer and fellowship one with another. Let us come and receive his healing of forgiveness. And let us live a lifestyle of praise that touches those we meet as we travel through this week and in the weeks to come. Amen.